Mr. Lee Jae-young is with us. And thank you for coming. You know, we gathered here this morning with a very special subject for discussion, for which we as a society should give more thought to it and do more about it. That is philanthropy. The special guest speaker is Mr. Gi Sormang. I'm sure all of you know him very well because he was with us many times before. I consider him one of the leading thinkers of our time. He is a very versatile thinker. His interest spans from economics to philosophy and, of course, philanthropy, which is, again, one of his areas of interest. In fact, he has written more than 20 books. I know that most of those books are translated into Korean and published in Korea. In fact, he is with us here in Seoul this time to launch another book about philanthropy. The title, I just got the copy last night. The book was titled, "The Good Money Changes the World." 착한 돈이 세계를 변화시킨다 하는 책인데, 난 아직 I didn't read it, but I'm looking forward to reading it. So he will enlighten us on this very important subject for Korea at this time in particular. I hope his book will generate a new momentum for Korea, again, as a society, to give more thought to this very important subject. Well, with no further ado, I would like to invite Professor Gi Sormang. Please join me in welcoming him.
Dear Sakong-il, dear friends, it's always a joy and an honor to be invited for your breakfast meeting. And I don't know how many times you have been kind enough to invite me for these meetings, but certainly you have done it along the years, giving me the opportunity to introduce my new books to a Korean audience and also to have feedback from the audience. And the questions, of course, are for me the most interesting part of the debate. So I don't want to give a long, academic conference. I will try to explain why I've written this book, why I think, wrongly or rightly, that this is a timely book. I think that it is a book which is a necessity for a country like South Korea. The book has been initially released in France and in the United States very recently, and it is now in the process of being translated in many countries in Asia and in Latin America. So the book is about philanthropy. The title of the book in French and in American is "In Praise of Giving." So why would you discuss this notion of giving right now and right here? I've just been asked, I think by Kim Jin-yoon, why did you write this book? Well, the answer is very easy. Because there was nothing on philanthropy which was available. So I have a strong tendency to write books which are non-existent. And when you try to understand why philanthropy is as important as it is in a country like the United States, where non-profit does represent 10% of the economy, you discover that there is something there which is not very well covered and which needs to be understood and which probably does answer a very strong necessity in our developed countries. To make things easier and shorter, we economists and philosophers and political scientists, we have the tendency to always summarize the political and economical debate to a confrontation between free market and government. And so do we need more free market? Do we need more government? Do we need more regulation? Do we need less regulation? And by doing that, we forget that in between the market and the government, there is like an unknown space. This unknown space is philanthropy. Market is governed by profit. Government is governed by authority or general interest, and philanthropy or non-profit sector is governed by generosity. I think generosity belongs to any society, and you can be Korean, I can be French, we could be American, but our life is more complicated than it appears. Actually, we like to make money. This is why we go to the market. We like to have some authority, and this is very often why we go and work for the state. But also, we have the need to give. And this need does answer some necessities and queries from the society which are not satisfied neither by the market nor by government. I will give some examples. Our societies are very complicated and getting more complicated by the day. New needs emerge, and neither the government nor the market is in the best position to answer all queries. For example, people getting older, and less and less modern society are equipped to cope with elderly people. And in a country like yours, where the Confucianist tradition would require the younger people to take care of the elder people, it's less and less the truth. So you have the emergence of kind of what I call a social desert, where many new social problems emerge, where nobody is really in charge. This is true for elder people. This is true for younger people, when parents don't have the money to send them to the best school. You have problems who suffer from any kind of handicap in life. You have problems who suffer from, let's say, drug addiction. You have people getting out of jail and unable to find a new life. I could give you a large number of social situations which are extremely difficult and where social answers are lacking and solidarity is weak. Answers are lacking for two reasons. First, the free market doesn't find any profit in intervening in this kind of field. There is no money to make. And also, a private corporate can consider that it's not its duty to be in charge of certain activities which are foreign to the company or which are not part of the public relations strategy of a company. In a way, and many South Korean companies are doing that, you would support a university, you would support art, and this is good, but this is part of the PR strategy of the company. Now, to take care of more complicated problem is maybe not part of the PR strategy of the company. And on the government side, well, governments have two limits. The first limit is that the governments can edict only general rule for the society as such. It is not the job of a government to get too much into detail, and they are not equipped, and also it's not philosophically justified to look at very specific cases and to tailor a specific solution for specific cases. Also, governments all over the world, they have financial limits. If you go too far, building a welfare state, which in the case of Europe we did, and with very good intentions, you reach a limit where, if you go too far in improving the solidarity and in taking care of the people who are the most in need, you find yourself in a difficult financial situation. And governments have another limit. Governments do not have, I don't say they don't have imagination, they have a lot. But governments are not in a position to try and to fail. I give you an example, a very simple example that every country will understand. You have, for example, drug addiction everywhere in the modern world. All governments are trying to cope with drug addiction. But when you have a drug addiction program, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. You never know. You don't know what the solution. So when a program, a social program doesn't work, in any government, the answer is, well, it didn't work because we didn't put enough money. You never confess to your constituency, we were totally wrong. We spoiled the money. We financed the wrong program. No, you say the program didn't work, therefore we must go further and we must add more money. What I mean by that, and especially in democratic government, there is no real space for trial and error. And in the field of solidarity, I think the answer is trial and error. We don't know what will work, therefore we will try. It doesn't work, no matter, we are a private charity, we stop the program, we shift to another program. Okay? This being said, it appears that in our societies, there is like a wide space, and the space is increasing. I call that kind of a social desert, where a large number of people, because of lack of education, because of health problem, because they are getting older, and they are, well, because they are not well adapted to the society, they need a kind of solidarity, a kind of help in health, education, or any other initiative that you can think of. And this new solidarity deserve to be supported neither by government nor by free enterprise, but by philanthropy. So what is philanthropy? Philanthropy must be a collection of disparate initiatives. And the strength of philanthropy in a country like United States, for example, which is the country where philanthropy for historical reason is the most developed and also for religious reason, in America, anything goes. You have thousands of charities. You have thousands of churches with social programs. You have thousands of initiatives with no limit. And as you know, the money which is spent by individuals and by corporate is totally deductible from income taxes. Why is that? It is deductible because the government considers that taxes do not belong to the state. Taxes belong to the people. And if the people feel then they can be useful for the society in any direction. They should be free to do so. And it's because of this diversity that you will have creativity in the social field. Sure, many foundations will prove useless. But to prove useless also is the possibility for other foundations to prove useful and to show the way through trial and errors to solutions which didn't come to the mind of the state bureaucrat. So I don't say that the American model, which is the core of my book, needs to be imitated. It's just to show that there are many possibilities where South Korea could be and should be more active. So some reflection about South Korea. When you look at the figure of what South Korean as individuals give, the figures are very low. South Korea is one of the modern countries, and certainly among the OECD countries, where charitable giving, including churches and temples, is the smallest among developed countries. Maybe because everybody here is so intense in making money and making a life that there is nothing left for the others. And maybe family comes first, but the family is becoming smaller and smaller. And I think that this kind of economic pressure has made the Korean society rather selfish, and that part of the Korean society has been totally forgotten and put aside because of this lack of solidarity and lack of empathy from the successful Korean people. If you look at the South Korean companies, corporates, some of them give a lot, as I said, for university, higher education, and art, which is good, certainly excellent for the country, but it gives the feeling that philanthropy is really, as I said before, part of public relations. When a former chairman of a large company decides to become a philanthrope, usually it's not because he has suddenly become generous, it's because he doesn't want to go to jail. And this gives philanthropy a bad name. This gives philanthropy a bad name. My position is not to dwell too much on the motivation of the people who give. You know, we all give for good and bad reasons. We give because we are generous. We give because we are vain. We give because we want to see our name on a wall in a museum. We give because we want to be in the newspaper. I don't care. Because I think all these motivations are mixed among everybody. What is more important in South Korea is to develop a system where people could give more easily, in a more transparent way, and to be sure that what they give is used efficiently. I must salute, for example, the initiative by one of the founders of Naver, was created a portal called Happy Beans, which makes easier to individual Korean to give, but they know to whom they give, but they don't know what is the efficiency of what they give. So as you start from scratch, in a way, in South Korea, it's very important to build independent institutions to evaluate the efficiency of giving and help people not only to give, but also help people to know that they give for a purposeful reason and they can evaluate the results. One of the main deficiencies in the United States is that people give a lot, but you don't always know where the money goes. To give you an example, which is common to the United States and South Korea, when some years ago there was a tsunami, not very far from South Korea, billions have been sent to Indonesia and Thailand. Nobody really knows what happened to these billions. And the best way to encourage philanthropy is to make philanthropy more transparent. That's the way to encourage people. Now, I think the government in South Korea has a role to play. The tax deduction, if I understand well, have been raised from 10% to 30% for individuals, and I think it's 10% for corporate profits, which can be deducted from your taxes. This is very small and does not really recognize the legitimacy of giving. In the United States, it's 100%. Why is it 100%? It's not because the government is generous. It's because the government considers that what the individual does, or what a foundation or a charity does, is as useful as what the government does. So there is a kind of respect for individual initiative, and that you don't have in South Korea, where the government tends to think that what he does is always more efficient and more legitimate what the individual does. So I think in a democratic and open country, the notion that the individuals know as well as the government how to improve solidarity and make the society more generous and more transparent, this should be translated into the tax code. There is another aspect in the tax code of South Korea which seems a bit bizarre to me, that some philanthropic initiative can be deducted until 100% of what you give from your income, for your income declaration, but only in the field where government decide that this is the way to go. Why would government decide what is the way to go? I mean, that's, once again, this is not democratic at all. Why should the government know best? The government doesn't know best. It's one of the actors in this social desert, as I said before, where really nobody has an answer. Now, which I've been here only since 24 hours, but I'm struck by the appeal of this quite new idea that there should be something, a non-profit sector between the government and the market. And I don't think there is an easy solution that South Korea would go from zero to the United States situation. This is a long history. But I do think that there is in South Korea kind of a social malaise in the society, and many in South Korea, and I think you will not contradict me on that, many understand that the South Korean society is far from perfect, that the society has become more democratic, more open, and more wealthy, but that many people are forgotten on the side of the road, and that the government nor the private sector has not found a solution to take care of these people. And once again, because of trial and error, because of the diversity and multiplicity of private initiative, I think the Korean society should become better as a society if the right space is given to philanthropy. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, thank you very much for sharing with us your very candid observations on Korea as a society in this area of philanthropy. I think really we as a society really give serious thought to this, the current status, particularly in the taxation area. You know, all the tax laws and codes were written at the very early stages of development. At that time, the policymakers were in the government were primarily focused on resource mobilization for economic development. And our capability of resource mobilization at the time was very, very low. So the money spent for philanthropy and the what you call this solidarity didn't get much high priority then. So that's why the corporate deduction for donations were very, very rather limited and stingy. But at this stage of development, I think we have to really give new thought to it. And as you said, we may not go 100% toward the U.S. practice, but I think we can improve on to a large extent. And so what you said, I think there are a lot to chew on and do more about it. Well, with this very interesting presentation, I'd like to invite some of the comments and questions from the floor. Yes, there were two hands up. Yes, yes. Microphone.
My name is Joseph Cho, a Korean name Cho Eun-kyung. I represent the Seoul Times, the online English language newspaper. I know you're a frequent visitor to Korea, but welcome to Seoul again. I like to give you basic questions, but what I consider very important question. My question is about sustainable growth versus social responsibility of big businesses like Samsung or LG. And particularly, I'd like to get your opinion about how big a role they should play for philanthropic society or more egalitarian society. And I'd like to get your personal opinion, not standard answer. Thank you very much.
All right. Okay. Why don't you invite another? Yes, question.
Okay.
My name is Seol Won-tae, a journalist.
Yes, yes.
I'd like to know what are the sources of your knowledge about Korea. You cited some interesting instances concerning Korean companies donating for philanthropic purposes, but anyway, it's part of their PR strategy. And then I know that you worked as a kind of honorary in a kind of honorary position to work for the improvement of Korean image during the Lee Myung-bak government. So, I'd like to ask you what or how you are doing what you are doing for the Park Geun-hye government, and could you compare these two governments as far as you can? Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
thank you.
yes.
Yeah.
One more. Yes. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Yes.
My question is, I think, on the same theme as the previous two questions.
Please go ahead.
I hope I'm not misinterpreting you, but when you talk about corporate social responsibility and the donations of big corporations, you seem to dismiss it a little bit, if I may say so, as a PR exercise. I hope it's not a misinterpretation. However, there's a lot of attention paid to corporate contributions to CSR, and it shows up in the annual reports, it shows up in the share price. Does this not, in fact, provide the mechanism that you were talking about in terms of being able to measure how effective it is and therefore give the transparency that you think is necessary?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, with this, and then we'll have second round.
Okay.
Dr.
And in disorder. My position with President Lee Myung-bak was purely honorary, and I was very proud to be distinguished by the president. But I understood from the beginning that it was an honorary president, okay, honorary distinction. And so I was not active in the political process. I'm not Korean, and it would not have been legitimate for me to intervene in the political process. I was invited, and Dr. Il Sakong was present at this meeting, to express my view about the image of Korea abroad. And it's a topic on which I've spoken many, many times, including in your institute, because since I know Korea, it's been 30 years, I've always been struck by the discrepancy between the economic success of South Korea and a lack of image, a weakness of cultural image. And my position was to say that to have a strong cultural image is extremely important in diplomatic life and also in economic life. And to put it bluntly, if you sell a product which is made in Korea, and if Korea has a strong image for marketing purpose, it brings benefits to the company. And I was always struck, that was years ago, things have changed a lot, when the Samsung and Hyundai even was sold in Europe without saying that they were made in Korea, and people thought that it was made in Japan. As they trusted Japan more than Korea, they were happy to buy a Hyundai or Samsung Japan-built object. And I think that the Korean were not proud enough about their culture, and I was extremely happy when the National Museum of Korean History was opened in Seoul, and very proud to be invited at the opening. And I think things have changed tremendously since 10 years. And now when you buy a Korean product abroad in United States and Europe, you know that it's made in South Korea, and you feel safe about it being made in South Korea. So I think that this progress of the South Korean cultural image came through very various channels. It came from the large corporates, it came from artists, and it came partially from government. My position regarding corporate, the promotion of cultural action from the government is that it's always been a little bit disorganized. Slogan is changing, and the PR are changing, and the government was not really able to define a clear strategy regarding this image. But even that the strategy was not very clear, the progress has been tremendous. Of course, everybody asked me about K-pop and the Gangnam Style and all that. I mean, I do not overestimate the importance of popular culture. I also do not underestimate it. It's part of the general progress of South Korean image in the world. In the case of France, if I may, K-pop is not that popular, but South Korean novels and South Korean movies are extremely popular in France. So the progress of the image comes through various channels, and government being only one of these channels among many. And much more is to be done. I do regret, I told him many, many times, that the National Museum in Seoul should not be better known, and should not be more involved in exchanges, but it's making progress. There is, right these days, there is a wonderful Sheila exhibition in New York. I understand there will be one in Paris in 18 months. So progress are being made. And not because of me, maybe not because of government. It's because suddenly the world is discovering that somewhere between Japan and China, there is kind of an unknown civilization which still needs to be discovered, and this is what South Korea is about. And I'm quite optimistic regarding the future in terms of tourism. I think tourism, the convention business and all that will become a major industry in South Korea. I know that South Korea always focused on industry and not that much in service, but if you look at the modern economy, service are extremely important, and all the conditions, cultural, safety, hospitality, behavior of the people, all the conditions do exist in South Korea, and I've always insisted that the service industry based on tourism culture will be booming industries in the year to come. Now about the question 1 and 3, about the corporate business donation. I certainly do not underestimate the role they play. And I said very clearly from the beginning that you have in Seoul, for example, and not only in Seoul, some remarkable museums, art exhibition, maybe many artistic activity, which have been made possible only because of the money invested by the larger companies in Korea. Okay? And I have a lot of respect for that. And most of the major so-called private museums are sponsored here in Seoul and in other cities by this corporate company. Now, I will not go as far as that to say that companies have a social responsibility. I'm a bit reluctant about this concept of social responsibility. I do think that the responsibility of a company is to be profitable. And if part of the profit can be used in a skillful and useful donation and sponsorship and kind of philanthropy, and that's fine. But I wouldn't, that was Milton Friedman's position, and I share this position, I wouldn't say that the main role of a company is philanthropy or social responsibility. I think the major social responsibility of a company is to provide good jobs, heavy profits for the shareholders, and education for the workers, increase the workforce, participate in the development of the country. And I think this is social responsibility. To make the country better is social responsibility. So I certainly do not despise their philanthropic activities, but I will certainly not expect from any company to put that at the bottom of its priorities. At the top of the priorities is, once again, economic development, jobs, profits, equipment of the country, and so on. And philanthropy comes after, and also it's part of the culture. You know, in the United States, if I may once again compare, the board of directors, the board of shareholders and directors expect the company to give part of the profit to non-profit activities. In South Korea, I'm not sure that the board of directors and shareholders are enthusiastic about giving too much money to philanthropic activity. So you need really to have the culture change a little bit, and it is through an evolution of the society that the corporate philosophy will change. And I want a final remark about philanthropy. Philanthropy is not only about money. Philanthropy is about giving your time. If you look at, once again, at the United States, 90% of the Americans give part of their time to a philanthropic activity. At the school level, at church level, at any level. So it's part of being a citizen in America, that part of your time should be given freely to a cause which is a cause which has no impact on your behavior, but which brings you some social or psychological benefit. And I think that to be a volunteer is maybe more important than to give money. Anybody can give money, especially if you have a lot, but anybody can give time even if you don't have money. And my conclusion on this is that the beauty of philanthropy is that it goes both ways. I mean, if you give time or money to a person in whatever condition which needs you, there is a benefit for you because it makes your personal life richer in a way, okay? And it makes the life of the person you help also richer. So philanthropy is too often measured by the benefits of the people who receive, the beneficiaries. But I think the beauty of the philanthropy, and you don't have that on market, you don't have in the government, that philanthropy goes both ways. It's a social and psychological benefit for those who volunteer and for those who receive from this volunteer activity. And this is what I would like to see in South Korea.
Okay, good. Okay, another round. Yes, Dr. Kim. He's president of KIET, another think tank for the government.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Savant.
Bonjour.
Actually, during I hearing your presentation, actually speech, I felt a kind of great openness of my mind and great pleasure when you contrasted the Korean society for this problem and the American society. Even though Korea is very kind of well known as a fast follower, fast imitator, I don't think that the Korea would be decided to imitate or follow the American model, actually. Maybe these days it seems that there is a tendency amongst the Korean people, a kind of reluctance or resistance when it comes to imitating American system or American style. So I'm thinking of European style for this problem, actually. I lived in France for 7 years. It seems that France is, by its foundation of country, is decided to give a lot of space for this problem, philanthropy, because when you read the 3 basic principles of French Republic, there is liberté, égalité, fraternité, solidarity or cosmopolitan solidarity at the 3 basic pillars of French Republic. So, what do you think about the European society for this problem? It seems that at this continent, actually, it seems that the government is decided to commit more for this problem, philanthropy. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Let me invite another one. Yes.
Sure.
And then the reporter there. Yes.
네, 좋은 강연 감사합니다. 저는 한국말로 질문드리겠습니다. 한국에서 기업인들의 기부에 대해서 부정적인 게 제 판단에는 저희 이제 대기업에서의 경영주들의 범법 행위가 있어가지고 지금 감옥에 계신 분들도 있고 하는데, 제가 판단하건대 기부문화 이전에 한국에서는 좀 기업인들의 준법이 돼야 되지 않나를 생각하고요. 그러나 이제 한국 문화에서는 한편으로는 경영인들의 경제 활동을 위해서는 기업인들의 범법 행위에 대해서 관대해야 한다는 그런 주장도 있습니다. 거기에 대한 교수님의 견해와 또 더불어 가지고 저희도 이제 기부에 대해서 많은 것들이 도입이 되고 있고 문화를 전파를 하고 있는데 기본 토대가 되어 있지 않은 상태에서 들어오다 보니까 학생들은 그 봉사활동이 점수화되어 있고 그 회사 직원들은 또 고가 점수에 반영되는 그러니까 겉만 이제 모방되는 그런 문화가 있습니다. 그런 부분에 대해서도 이제 뭐 코멘트라기보다도 어떤 그 아까 말씀하신 거랑 같은 맥락인데 기본 문화나 정신에서의 이런 부분이 먼저 되어야 되지 않나 그런 생각이 듭니다. 감사합니다.
예, 예.
서강대학교 김동률 교수입니다. 그 말씀을 잘 들었는데요. 되게 플로우에 이제 한국분이 많아서 저도 한국말로 질문을 해보겠습니다. 질문을 하려고 보니까 앞선 분이 비슷한 질문을 한 것 같은데, 우리나라는 이제 기소로만 교수님이 한번 왔다 가시면 기업에 대한 그 엔타이 정서 상당히 높아집니다. 사실 기업이라는 게 이제 저런 박애주의에서 기부하는 게 맞기는 맞습니다만은, 다 한편 생각하면은 뭐, 밀턴 프리드먼 같은 사람은 기업에 이제 이윤을 창출해서 일자리를 만들고 또 그런 것이 더 본연의 의무고 그럼으로써 사회에 봉사하는 것이 더 좋다. 이런 견해도 있지 않습니까? 근데 우리나라는 지나치게 기업에 대해서 좀 엔타이한 정서가 많기 때문에 대개 이제 사람들이 특히 대학생 같은 경우는 재벌에서 지나치게 부정적인 인상을 많이 가지고 있습니다. 물론 굿머니 체인지 월드에 대해서는 아무런 의견이 없습니다만은 오늘날 상황에서 한국이 지나치게 이 기업에 대해서 부정적으로 확산되는 것에 대해서는 상당히 우리가 경계해야 될 것 같은 생각이 듭니다. 저는 물론 뭐 그 반대편의 입장에서 비판적이긴 하지만은 기업과 사회와의 기부문화 이런 것들이 좀 조화롭게 이루어져야 되는데 한국은 지나치게 어떤 카타르사이즈하는 하나의 방법으로 이렇게 진행되고 있는 데 대해서 저는 굉장히 안타까움을 가지고 있습니다. 그래서 소로만 교수님이 한번 왔다 갈 때마다 우리는 상당히 좌절감을 느끼고 우리는 이 정도밖에 안 되는가 이런 생각이 드는데 그 점에 대해서 개인적인 생각은 어떠신지 정말 궁금합니다. Thank you, sir.
Okay. I start with the last question. And it's, being given the fact that big corporations in Korea are so successful and played such a decisive role in the modernization of Korea, and this generates kind of a double feeling. On one way, people understand that these corporations have been decisive. And without these corporations, South Korea would not be where it is today. And on the other hand, because they are so successful and so powerful, you expect more from this corporation. So in politics, like in the daily life, people have a very ambiguous feeling vis-à-vis these corporations. Okay, they hate it, but they want their children to join it. And they're very, very proud of the success of these corporations, and they would like this corporation to give more to non-profit activities. So how do you find a middle way between these contradictory feelings? There are possibilities, and I'll come back to the question of imitation. It's not imitation, but because this exists not only in the United States, but also in many European countries. What I find very interesting in many corporations in Europe, as in the United States, is that these corporations give time, free time to their employees, for the employees to be active in non-profit activities. To give you an example, a company will pay you 1 hour a week or 1 hour a month, it does depend. It's paid by the company, but during this hour, you do whatever you like if you volunteer for a non-profit organization. This is kind of a middle way where the company allows you to have some philanthropic activity. You are paid for that, but the company doesn't control what kind of philanthropic activity you have. Also, there are other examples of companies in Europe and in the United States where the workers decide that they will give $1 or $10 a month to a charity. And the money is deducted from your wage at the end of the month. And it is tax deductible. So there are ways which combine the main responsibility of the company, which is to be profitable, as I said before, but also to be socially responsible by giving the people time or the possibility to give money to a cause which is near to their heart. So the contradiction can be, in a way, it can be resolved, and this can be easily implemented. There was another another remark about comparison. Should we follow the American model or the European model? Well, my position is to say never follow anyone. I mean, philanthropy works if it's rooted in your culture. Clearly, in America, philanthropy is rooted in the Christian culture of America. It starts with the Christian culture of America, okay? In France, we had, until the middle of the 19th century, a very strong philanthropic activity. But it was rooted in the Catholic Church, and when the Catholic Church nearly disappeared and was replaced in a way by the concept of the welfare state, people shifted their energy from private philanthropy to the welfare state. So in the case of South Korea, I don't need to tell you that in your culture, which is very diverse, with many religions, but the philosophical roots of philanthropy do exist in the Korean culture. And you know what I'm talking about. I don't need to elaborate. You know that it is in your heart, and that in the Korean civilization, money is not the ultimate goal. And there are other motivations which belong to your culture, and the country is now, as you say, I mean, in the first step, you had to mobilize all the financial resources for the development of the country. The country is not totally fully developed, but you have now resources which can be mobilized in the service of causes which are closer to your heart and part of the philosophy of your culture. So it's not a question of imitation. And I would say the same regarding the European and the French model of welfare state. We have a very significant welfare state. I mean, in financial terms, it is the largest in Western Europe right now. Okay, this welfare state brings many benefits to the people. I would certainly do not deny it, but the welfare state has two limits. The first is that it's extremely costly. And we know that right now, I mean, don't want to delve into politics, but we have reached these limits. And even the government, which is a socialist government, knows that we have reached this limit and that we need to do what the Germans did, for example, and what the Italians are doing these days. We have to reduce some kind of social benefits and to give back to the people some individual responsibility, or to give back to non-governmental organizations some kind of social responsibility. So you have a limit, and we have reached this limit. In South Korea, you are still far from this limit, but you must be careful because, you know, it can destroy the impetus for economic development, okay? But the second limit is not a financial limit. As I said before, our modern and very complex society are confronted with problems that we don't know how to solve. And we don't know what is the solution. I mentioned addiction, okay? Or some kind of teenagers' violence, and or teenagers' pregnancy, and I could go on and on like that, okay? The welfare state doesn't have a solution, because there is not one solution. Many solutions must be tried. And in order to have all these solutions competing, you must appeal to the private sector. You must appeal to NGOs, charities, and foundations, you know, to compete and provide different solutions and see what works and what doesn't work. If I may, in my book, I mean, I quote one of the leading and remarkable philanthropists in America, George Soros, And George Soros says that as a foundation president, he says, my duty is to fail. Because if I don't fail, it means that I haven't tried. Okay? No government will say my duty is to fail. It's impossible. So it's kind of a redistribution of functions, responsibilities in terms of solidarity to have competition. We need competitions. We need competition in economy. We need the competition in ideas. We also need competitions in education. Nobody knows what the best education system. We need education to help the older people. We need competition to help people with problems. We need competition to improve solidarity and to build a better country. This is why I'm advocating philanthropy, and I wrote a book in philanthropy because my position is to say that nobody is right, nobody is totally right, nobody is totally wrong, and we just must make progress toward better understanding of our societies, a better society, and this goes through competition of ideas, competition of solution, and philanthropy is a way to increase the level of competition to solve our social problems.
Yes, Dr. An and okay, 여기 예, 안 박사님 그 다음에
Mr. Sormang, well, again, I think you're really insightful. The analysis is very illuminating. Korea has been, agrarian society, thousand years, in which we have even the adage saying that even one piece of soybeans must be divided, among family members and community people. But after introduction of modern capitalism, especially right after Korean War, just the sheer physical survival has been the main issue to escape from starvation, and so everybody has to compete each other for one's own survival. So in that regard, we haven't succeeded in. And Korean business, they appeared in international scenery rather recently. I think I still would like to see Korean companies remain competitive in a global market, just concentrating on how to improve their R&D activities and how to upgrade their product, sellable at the global market, rather than looking at how the corporate board members look for some philanthropic activities, so on. However, these days we can see there are some good signs from, for example, the Samsung, LG, Hyundai. They are really committed to carry on, at the corporate social responsibility at the infant stage. So, I can see that we'll make some progress along that line. Well, the point I would like to make is that you cited many cases of the example of the United States. Seems to me that tradition has deeply related to the Christian, cultural the civilization in the U.S. and also European society. But in Korea, fortunately, and the Christian now spread very quickly. Churchgoers in Korea may constitute about more than 30% of the public, and they donate, according to the Bible, 1/10 of their income to church revenue. Here, a big question is that how we can expect transparent operation of churches, some religious organization to spend the donations for a general purpose, general welfare program, rather than expanding their own the religious denomination. Unfortunately, that has been our fact. So I think this maybe what you said could be spread and practiced, in a universal context by the religious organization, in Korea. That could be a great help for Korea. Thank you.
Okay, why don't you invite one more question? Okay, here.
Good morning, sir. I'm producer Yoon from the Arirang TV, Arirang Satellite International Broadcasting Station. And I have one rather basic question. You mentioned a lot about the government social responsibilities and also the corporate social responsibilities, right? But I'd like to know what the individuals' social responsibilities in terms of philanthropy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. First of all, just a very, very quick remark. I mean, you say that the Korean large corporates have been extremely successful and creative on the global market, and thank you for that, because it brings competition to the rest of the world, and it's a tremendous incentive for French, European, and American companies to be better. And so competition is good. And what I would like from Korea is more of it, and not only Samsung, Hyundai, and LG, but more companies. I think your companies are doing well, but there are not enough of them. And I hope that we mentioned the regulation, and I hope that through the regulation, in the coming years, we'll see more dynamic and creative companies, and bringing competition to the rest of the world, because we all progress together. I mean, if you are doing good, I'm doing good. I mean, in modern economy, it's not because South Korea has become rich that as a Frenchman I become poor. As a Frenchman, I get a better telephone because of you, and cheaper. But maybe tomorrow you'll be able to compete with us in other fields. And so competition is good for everyone, including for you. And so the problem of Korea is not the lack of equality from these companies, it's a limited number of these companies. And I hope that you'll be successful in your deregulation process, and give a chance to new entrepreneurs to create, not only in the industry but also in the service sector, new activities. And the second remark is about the role of religion, and I should say the roots and fundamentals of philanthropy. And basically, when you look at philanthropy everywhere, you find that there is kind of a religious or philosophical belief. I mean, this is absolutely fundamental, that from your heart, I mean, by the way, the title of the book in French is called In Praise of Giving, the American Heart, to show that it starts from the heart. And in South Korea, I mean, this notion of giving comes from the Christian churches, as you mentioned, but in Buddhism, you also have the same, and just to mention Buddhism, you have the same impulse also for generosity. So it's not strictly connected with the Christian religion. I mean, you have not to mention Islam or Judaism. In any religion, you have this incentive that, well, if you are well off, you have been lucky. And as you have been lucky, you need to give back to the people who have been less lucky than you. Now, starting from that, I think it's very important also not to consider that government is bad and free market is bad and philanthropy is good. No. Government is good and bad, free market is good and bad, and philanthropy is good and bad. You have good charities, you have bad charities. You have great foundations, and you have foundations which are totally useless. So, as in a way, in South Korea, you start not from scratch, but you start from a very low level. I think it's very important to have in mind that people belonging to a church or people giving money to a foundation should make these churches and these foundations more accountable. If I look at the world, and especially in the United States, there is a tremendous lack of transparency. Tremendous lack of transparency. I think that philanthropy should progress not only by people giving time and money, but also by creating independent institutions to be sure that the money which is given based on generosity is well used, and not only used, to finance a huge bureaucracy or just disappear through sheer corruption. So I think within the church is a good place to start, but also within foundation. The problem is that philanthropy is not very democratic. In most countries, you have a power and counter-power. and the countervailing power. In philanthropy, too often, and in my book I give several examples of that. You have huge foundations which are really not efficient because nobody is in a position to say you are not efficient. So this notion of countervailing power, for example, I give the example of the Bill Gates Foundation. They give away $3 billion a year. I consider that on the $3 billion a year, $2 billion a year are totally useless. But nobody is in a position to say it's useless. So if you start from scratch, maybe you have to think simultaneously in building foundations, NGOs, but also building independent institution which would be able to evaluate the efficiency of the money you give. Volunteering and giving is not enough. You have to control, like in any human society, where the money goes and where the time goes. It's once again, maybe it's more simple when you start from scratch, from a very low level, than you start from a very sophisticated level, like in the United States.
Okay. Yes, maybe one more. Yes, question or comment.
Welcome to Korea again.
Thank you.
With a beautiful spring. Well, a few years back, Mr. Bill Gates made a speech on creative capitalism in Davos. Then, if you know, would you comment on it? Creative capitalism.
Well, I never go to Davos because I have no business card, so I'm not invited. Creative capitalism is like creative economy. I mean, economy is creative by definition, and capitalism is creative by definition. So I think that to add the adjective creative to economy or to capitalism doesn't add anything at all. I mean, if capitalism or economy is not creative, I mean, what is capitalism made for, and what is economy made for? I mean, the huge progress of our societies and huge progress of mankind have been the consequence of innovation, and innovation comes from science transformed by entrepreneurs. So the process is creative by definition. Mm-hmm. So maybe when you say creative capitalism is to go against some people who think that, I don't know, maybe socialism is more creative than capitalism. But history has always answered this question. Socialism is not creative, therefore capitalism is creative. So you can say it's creative, but okay, just to feel comfortable, but it doesn't really make a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Korean government tried to make Korean economy creative.
Oh yeah, we had the whole
right,
discussion.
Yeah, right. So you are right to interpret that capitalism is actually, as interpreted by Schumpeter, is a process of creative destruction. So without the innovation and entrepreneurship, you can't be creative enough. So what the government is trying to do under the leadership of Park Geun-hye now is deregulate business environment so that there will be more creative entrepreneurial activities. I hope she succeeds. But in any case, this is the process of the capitalist development. I think the question posed by the Arirang reporter about this, the company level, corporate level donation and individual personal level donation. I think this distinction is very important because corporations, as you said, its main purpose is making profit, maximize profit. But with that profit, and there will be many wealthy people created, and with that money should be spent properly, and for including the philanthropy. So I suppose there should be two-level incentives. Incentives at one level is corporate level, of course, should be more generous so that corporate level can donate more. But still, without forgetting that the main purpose is profit maximization. And then at the individual level also, I think we should have more give more incentives so that wealthy people, rich segment of society can do more on philosophy. That way, the government tax money can be spent for something else, and the society as a whole, from the private sector, can take care of a lot of this, the needy people and needy segments. So, but in any case, both individual level and corporate level, unfortunately, considering our per capita income level and development level, still we are behind in other countries about this philosophy. So we should do more, particularly, I suppose, at the individual level, so that government can do more on something else. And I think since we are where we are today, so I think we need to give more thought to this. And as I said at the beginning, we as a society should do more about this philosophy. And I think your book will enlighten us on this. And by the way, this Kisormang is actually always a pro-business and business-friendly person, not against. And by the way, you know, he persuaded me when I was in charge of G20 preparation. I strongly recommended the venue of the summit dinner at the National Museum. And then I went to National Museum first, and then I went to Lium first, and also I went to this furniture museum for First Ladies dinner and luncheon venue. And he convinced me, I mean, he gave me the idea that the National Museum would be the best place. So, and I'm very glad Korean government decided to hold the summit there, and we succeeded. And then we appreciated so much by all the G20 leaders and First Lady by having the venue at the museum. Well, I thank you for that. Well, with this we have to end, and it is always a pleasure to have you, and he is business friendly, and he is America friendly, and he is Korea friendly. He's good friends of Korea. Well, I hope you have a good time here. I successful launch your new book, and come back soon. Thank you. Okay.